Howdy ESSM 406. In today's lecture, we discuss problems with market-based solutions. So in your memo, I asked you to discuss various market-based solutions in regards to your policy issue. Now we outlined this in the last lecture. So let's go over some of the advantages for market-based solutions. Well, one of the primary benefits is they really allow people to make their own decisions about how they want to solve their environmental compliance issues. They can figure out what are the costs and benefits that are most important to them. So command and control, remember, says that you must do this or you cannot do that. It's a government telling you what to do solution. Whereas a market-based solution gives you more of an incentive to do the right thing for the environment. And if it's really expensive for you, you can decide how to handle that. And perhaps within policy, we can set a price to comply. And it's okay if a few people don't comply, as long as the majority do. So pollution is the classic example. In pollution, we don't really care if there's a little bit of pollution within the environment. What we worry about is if it's a lot. So if we can make polluting really expensive, we can reduce the amount of overall polluters, and it's not as big a deal if there's just a few. It's sort of the same in water use. If we raise the cost of water, then it's more expensive for people to water their lawns. So for people like me who don't really care about watering their lawn, I'm not going to do it. And then someone who really cares about their lawn can spend the money, make that choice to spend that amount of money in watering their lawn so they can have green grass. So hopefully the ideal situation is the amount of people that are not worried about having green grass and not willing to spend so much money to have green grass will counterbalance the people that really want green grass. And it will be more efficient in the long run to be market-based, because we will reduce water use maybe as much as we would have done if we'd banned watering lawns altogether. And it may keep away some of the bad feelings that people have about being told what to do by the government. Now, there are some disadvantages, and these are some of the problems we face when we look at market-based solutions. So one of them is if you really want to clean the environment up completely, this won't really work. It would be much better to have a ban. So if there's something like a very toxic chemical that we don't want in the environment, that situation is better for a government ban. Another problem with market-based solutions is that they can be really difficult to set up and to administer. Now, the classic example always used with this is looking at sulfur dioxide emission controls. So this happened back in the 90s. George Bush Sr., who actually has the Presidential Library here, and I work at the Bush School of Government and Public Service, he signed a law to prevent acid rain. Now, acid rain's really bad. But when they did an interesting cost-benefit analysis, they didn't really think that it was worth doing a ban. So 5 years later, they did another cost-benefit analysis. And they found that the costs were much smaller than the benefits would have been. And so they forgot to include human health. The problem with acid rain is not only was there the acid rain problem, sulfur dioxide had a lot of other human health issues associated with it. One of the major ones is local smog, and that smog is really bad for people's lungs and for breathing. It's really terrible for human health. So they ended up setting up a big program to monitor and put in the scrubbers like we talked about, to help change the smog that was being released around all the areas where they were doing the coal-fired electricity production. Now, we talked about this in an earlier lecture, but I didn't describe it to you yet. Now I want to tell you about potential hotspots. And this is the perfect situation to bring it into. So this is another big big disadvantage to cap and trade. So say you want to reduce acid rain, so you put a cap on how much can be admitted. Each plant can reduce by X amount, and they can trade that to someone else. So let's say I have a company and my friend George over here has a company. I can cut my emissions in half and give half to him so he can use 1.5 amounts emissions. Now, if everyone is doing this, then the ideal piece is that it will come down. But the problem is, so some people would switch to sulfur coal, lower sulfur coal, like I told you about. And so we're doing this overall decrease of emissions. But what if we had like 3 big power plants together that were buying up from everyone else? So instead of just having their allotted, they would have multiple times what they were allotted. Now, an example of this is actually Cincinnati, Ohio, who's really well known. The city's really well known for having very poor air quality because of these coal-powered plants. So Cincinnati would be a hot spot. So even though overall emissions are less, that region is affected. The people that are living near those coal-fired power plants are affected. So these are some ideas that I want you to think about as you write your next memo. See if one of these market-based solutions is the best solution for your policy issue. And think about if this is hotspots or one of the problems that we talked about, difficult to set up, difficult to administer, if the environmental policy you are suggesting should be banned altogether. Think about how you need to fashion your solution. Market-based command and control. Think through the benefits and the negatives to it. And our next lecture will be on payments for ecosystem services.